Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this.
Do you find with the people that you work with, when they put things or when you put things on paper, they seem to dissipate, they're not as intimidating, or you look at it differently?
100%. One of the books that I highly recommend is The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. And one thing that he talks about is that we have this chimp element in our brain that basically is all the emotional side of us. Like it's the fight or flight, it's the, fear, it's the emotion, and then we have the human side of us that is the kind of more logical thinking. So if you are making dinner and your partner's due home and they're late, the chimp would be like, God, they're such an idiot. I can't believe I bothered to get dinner ready. I'm going to give it to the dog. I'm so angry that they're late. I bet they stayed at work. Da, da, da. Whereas the human, the more logical brain would go, oh, I hope everything's okay. Those, I feel so sorry for them. They must have been late and they must be frustrated and blah, 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 blah. So what happens is normally we try and silence the chimp, okay? Because we don't want all these kind of aggressive or angry or, upset thoughts in our head. But the problem is the chimp is so powerful, like way more powerful than the human. So what we do, and one of the things that I practice with the people I work with, is writing down what the chimp has to say, right? So one of the best things that ever worked for me was when I first got together with my now husband. He had a daughter. I have a stepdaughter who was 15, right? So you can imagine a woman walking into a life with a 15-year-old stepdaughter. It was hell on earth. And we were constantly challenged. And I remember my coach at the time was saying to me about journaling and doing all this. It was an absolute God save. So every day when something went wrong or when she behaved in a way we didn't like, I would journal and I would let that chimp go wild. And I would write down everything. And believe me, if anybody ever found these journals, they would look at me in a different light. But I would write everything down and I'd let all the anger out, because what you have to do is you have to wear the chimp out. You can't stop it. The chimp is going to do its thing. So if you try and push it down, what's going to happen is she's going to look at me in the wrong way and I am going to fly at her. And then it's going to start World War III in my house. So I would take myself off. I would journal. I would be as angry as I wanted to be. And then eventually I would wear the chimp out. And then what I would do is I would write the sentence, what if I came from love? And then the human took over, and the human went, this poor girl, her mum has left and she's not seen her mum since. She is 15. She's just been through exams. Her dad was in the military. He's now being at home all the time. He had his world broken. This new woman's just come into her life. Like, I feel so sorry for my husband. He's trying to navigate me and her. I feel sorry for her. And suddenly the human side would come out and you'd go, yeah. And then sometimes I would do that and I would turn to my husband and go, I'm sorry about what I said. Like, I shouldn't have said what I did, because I'd given it some time. So I think one of the exercises we do all the time is when we're talking fear and when we're talking like the what if. So the example that I often give is people are terrified of speaking. And you know what? Some people, you don't have to speak on stage. That's fine. But if some people want to, but the fear is holding them back, what we do is we let that chimp go mad. Because normally we're like, oh, don't talk about those things that might go wrong. I don't want to know. So we let the chimp tell us all the stuff that can go wrong. So on one side of the paper, I get them to write everything down. So I might fall over on stage. That's always my fear, that I'll trip. I'll forget my words. The tech won't work. I'll go too many times. Someone in the audience might know more than me. The other one that I used to fear all the time is I'll pee my pants. Right? I would be so nervous that I would genuinely think, I'm going to wrap my gosh, stage, right? So,
my podcast fears are I'll talk too much.
Yeah,
or I'll say it too many times, or
So write all that down. Let yourself go. This might happen, and then on the other side of the piece of paper, next to each one of them, write down, what would I do about it? So I trip up as I get onto the stage. What would I do about it? I'd be flipping embarrassed, but I'd probably laugh it off and they wouldn't forget me, that's for sure. But would I die? No. Would anything horrific happen? No. I forget my words. Well, no one knows what I'm going to say, for starters. For
So they don't
second
know
off,
you forgot it.
exactly,
It's
they wouldn't have
awesome.
a clue that I forgot a certain bit.
Yeah.
Or I'm a human at the end of the day. So if I forget, and I have done this before, where I've literally been in the like complete run of something and gone, oh, my brain's just gone blank. I'm so sorry. But I'm a human, and humans do that. What if I say and ah too many times? Well, I do, and it is what it is. No one's going to think I'm an idiot. So I go through and I literally get them to write next to every single point, what would I do if that happened? And then suddenly, exactly what you said, the strength of it just gets diluted, because it's like, well, yeah, like, because you start to realize this thing that you've built up in your head is nowhere near as terrifying as you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other beauty of writing them down, oh, I'm going to trip, is at least you thought about what you could do as a response. So you've already mapped that onto your brain. And like we were just talking about, your brain doesn't know the difference. So if you do trip, you already have some kind of response that you thought of in place before the thing actually happened. So writing that stuff down, getting it out on paper. In our tech world that we have, you and I are a little, I go back 20, 30 years. I was a teacher, started 30 years ago. And so none of this tech stuff was around. We wrote it all down, and there is value in actually picking up the actual pen and putting something on paper, because your brain has to go through that process of writing those things down. I mean, I'm not bashing tech. I'm just saying, for the mind work that we want to do to help us overcome our limiting beliefs, to help us overcome our fears, for us to actually become 1% better each day, it requires a couple extra steps to take. And I think physical journaling is one that is highly underrated.
And honestly, it's been a game changer for me, an absolute game changer. And I've been going through some stuff personally this year that will at some point be documented and talked about. But if I hadn't have had my journal where I could honestly go through and write it down. And the other good thing, not all journaling and not everyone wants to go back and read journals, and some of them shouldn't be read. Like, some of them should just be maybe that you can write and get rid of it. But actually, one thing that's been really lovely for me in this journey I've been going through is the fact that I have journaled, and I can go back and, so let's say you'd got yourself into some bad habits and you journaled while you were doing those bad habits, and then you get yourself out of them. It's a really good thing to go back and read, like, what you felt when you were in those bad habits, like when life was a certain way. So you can remind yourself, that's where I was. Look how far I've come. So for me, it has so many other things, not only just the whole proof of, if you write a goal down, it's more likely to come to fruition. If you, write with a pen and paper, it does something different in your brain than if you were to type. So there is some absolute science behind it. But I think for me, like, when someone says, what's the one thing I can do, journaling for me is huge.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.